Women are attracted to masculine men, but they don't want a man who is purely masculine, a man who has zero femininity inside him. I want you to check out this footage.
Are you attracted to more masculine men or more feminine men, would you say?
I think I like more masculine men, but the feminine qualities attract me as well.
Okay. So it's kind of like, would you say it's like a bit of a mix of both, kind of?
It's a mixture of both, yeah.
Ask most women this question and you'll get the exact same answer. I want a man who is primarily masculine, but ideally a mix of both. It's like me or most men. I want a woman who is primarily feminine, but ideally has a mix of both feminine and masculine characteristics. Overly feminine women, or women who are 100% feminine, are at best really boring and at worst incredibly frustrating. If a woman is 100% feminine, it means that she has no capacity for logical thinking. She's overly emotional and she's incapable of making decisions. And I'm someone who likes the feminine. I like the nurturing. I like the attention to detail, the attention to beauty. I love the softness, the kindness, all of that feminine stuff. But when it's time to get practical, if she's not able of dropping all of that and tapping into her masculine, getting stuff done, acting rationally, acting logically, realizing that it's not time for play, it's time for work, then I'm not going to be attracted to that because I'm attracted to intelligence and competence. Essentially, anything that goes to the extreme and becomes just one-dimensional ends up being really boring. Overly feminine women are boring and overly masculine men are boring. Now, there is huge potential for me to be misunderstood here because on this channel, I'm always talking about how important it is to develop your masculinity, how important masculinity is. So what do I mean by someone who is overly masculine? Perhaps the first thing that comes to your mind is that feminist perspective, saying that our society is rampant with toxic masculinity. There's too much testosterone, too much maleness. When I look at society, I don't see that as being a widespread problem. That's not my perspective. I have seen some individual cases where it's absolutely true, men doing some truly horrific stuff. But in my lifetime, I've seen a lot more of the opposite. Men not being masculine enough, men being too feminine, especially in the area of dating and relationships. Men who don't assert themselves, men who don't claim respect as the natural reward of their self-esteem. Men who don't take responsibility, men who don't lead, men who just defer to their female partner. You know the kind of guy I'm talking about, the yes dear, of course dear, whatever you want dear. You know, who just goes along with whatever his female partner wants. And women absolutely hate men like that. Because women get into relationships because they're seeking masculinity. They want to be feminine and they want their partner to demonstrate that competence, that leadership, that masculinity. So when a man reneges on all of that responsibility and just treats the woman like a princess, following her around like some obedient little puppy dog, women absolutely hate that. And so because I see so many instances of men being too feminine, you'll find that most of my videos are cautioning against that, encouraging men to tap into their natural masculinity. So this is going to be a little bit of an outlier, a bit of an exception to what you'll normally see on this channel, because what I want to do in this video is caution against overcorrecting, going so deeply into your masculinity that you reject your femininity altogether. So if you're in your life and you still feel like you've work to do on your masculine, you still feel like you're overly feminine, then just know that this video isn't referring to you. You need to be working on your masculinity first. Before you can really safely explore your femininity, you need to have a rock solid core of masculinity. That needs to be your baseline, your default. And if you haven't sorted that out yet, that needs to be your number one priority. But as men embark on this journey of tapping into their masculinity, you will encounter men who occasionally go too far. They overcorrect and they become too masculine. And that's not good for your dating life. And I'm going to explain why. But first, I want to tell you about my most recent Patreon exclusive content. We've got 2 new videos. One of them is about the challenges of dating while still living with your parents, how women feel about that, and at what age you should be looking to get your own place. I also have another video on the future of genetic engineering, specifically how technologies like CRISPR and the ability to select genes for your children, and what impact that's going to have on women's dating preferences for men. These videos are inspired by questions that I received through the website Patreon. So if you have a question that you've always wanted to ask me, a question you want me to do a video on, you should sign up to Patreon. It's also where you can access these videos plus a whole bunch of other exclusive content. It's just $5 a month and I'd love to receive your support. Okay, back to what I mean by being overly masculine. You know those radio shock jock hosts, or or maybe the really aggressive news opinion guy who doesn't let anybody finish a sentence on his show. He just shouts over their opinions, really dominant, really overbearing. He doesn't really respect the opinions of anybody else. He's really closed-minded. That kind of man is not in touch with his femininity. He only feels safe in the masculine, and he goes into it really hard. In a sense, it's actually impressive because it's not an easy task to run off adrenaline 24 hours a day, and that's what he's trying to do. You know that brain state that you get into when you're problem solving, when you're trying desperately to solve a task? Maybe you're on a time limit and there's no space for emotions, creativity, entertainment. It's all black and white. It's logical. It's about getting the task done as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible. That brain state is highly aggressive. It's really, really competitive, and in certain situations, it's extremely effective. I personally know that brain state well. I utilize it quite frequently in my life, and I enjoy it, that feeling of pure masculinity, of pure logic, of just working to get the task done. That brain state is so useful for so many masculine tasks. It's good for business, it's good for making money, it's good for playing sport, it's good for video games even. If pure masculinity could be ingested like it was a drug, it wouldn't be a relaxant like marijuana. It would be a stimulant like cocaine or some kind of amphetamine. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying it's bad. Masculinity is definitely a good thing. But for some guys, they only feel safe in their masculinity. They turn that state into a trait, as Timothy Leary used to say. So it becomes a permanently fixed part of their personality. They love it because they thrive on competition. That's where they feel safe. That's where they feel comfortable and competent. It keeps them really busy, really active. And when you're that task-oriented, there's no downtime to feel emotions or to dwell on the demons of your past, to look at past traumas or insecurities. No, there's no time for any of that. It's all about what's happening, action-oriented, focus, logic, behavior. If you want to ignore all of your feelings and just repress every emotion that you have, then being in a purely masculine state is wonderful for you. But it's also why these people are so boring. They're really one-dimensional, and you can't have a conversation with a guy like that without it turning into some kind of competition. There's no appreciation of deep complexities or nuance. It's all so black and white. He might be a really good business partner. He might be a really good teammate in a sporting match. He might be a really good clan member of your video game league or whatever it might be. But he's not going to be a particularly interesting friend because he doesn't have depth. If you can't just chill out every now and then, just relax, have some laughs, talk about some interesting subjects, share some emotions, share some vulnerabilities, just be real with me, then you're not really bringing much to the friendship. You're not interesting. Now, I feel really sorry for those guys. I have a lot of compassion for them because I have to imagine that they've encountered some kind of, pretty intense trauma, some kind of emotional upheaval in their, past. Otherwise, they wouldn't need to be dwelling so purely in the mental space. They wouldn't need to go so deeply into the masculine. They're terrified to feel their own emotions, and so they just stay at the cognitive level. And they often develop a very adversarial worldview in order to justify their behavior. So I do feel compassion, but whenever I see one of these overly macho guys who's always competing with everybody around them, they're really quick to anger. They can't discuss things without it being black and white. There's no nuance to it. I don't see that as strength. I see it as weakness. Just shouting down everybody who disagrees with you doesn't make you tough. It makes you kind of a coward. Even the guys that are built like a tank, like massive muscles that could obviously physically dominate me, it's still difficult to see somebody like that as having any kind of real strength because you can just sense the emotional fragility that lies underneath. Now, what's confusing for some guys is that they may have a friend who matches this description, one of these overly masculine guys, and he sees him being successful with women. And this doesn't seem to make sense because women, explicitly state that they need to feel safe around a man. And so if you've got this kind of thug life guy who has no emotional vulnerability whatsoever, he's just so masculine, you think, how does this work? Why are women finding him attractive? Sometimes these guys will even have an explicitly misogynistic worldview. All women are bitches and sluts, and I just Fuck them and leave. You know, they're never going to get a commitment from me. You know, that sort of thing. You listen to this guy spout his opinions and you think there's no way that he's going to be successful, but they often are. Women sleep with these kinds of guys. And they're telling you, hey man, this is what you got to do. You just got to become an arsehole. Women love it. And then you'll have the kind of sexual abundance that I have. Now, if you've been experiencing a lot of rejection and you're feeling really frustrated, and this guy comes along and tells you, you just need to be a dickhead. You need to treat these women like shit. And then you're going to clean up like I do. I can understand why you might be tempted by that. But let me tell you something that these guys won't tell you. The women who are sleeping with these overly masculine, one-dimensional guys are not high-quality women. They are low-quality women. Imagine for a moment a genuinely high-quality woman. She's intelligent, she's gentle, kind, creative, respectful, great system of ethics, great practical plans for the future. She's the kind of girl that universally everybody admires, everybody respects. All the men are attracted to her because she's got self-esteem. She knows what she wants. She's a high-quality woman. Now, imagine if this one-dimensional, overly masculine macho guy comes up to her and tries all of that macho stuff on her. It's not going to work on a high-quality woman. She's going to see through it in a second. She's going to see this is a guy who hasn't even learned how to integrate his own emotions yet. He hasn't even gotten in touch with fear, sadness, shame. This is a man who is so insecure and frail that he lacks the strength and courage to even look at his own feminine side. So this is the truth of it. These guys, while they might be cleaning up, it's not with high quality women. They will never be able to secure a high quality woman. So don't be jealous, because while he may have slept with 4 women this week alone, these are not the kinds of women that you want anything to do with. Because ask yourself this question: what kind of woman would feel safe around a man like that? The answer is women who live in pure survival mode. Women who genuinely fear for their physical safety, because that's what their environment and their community and social circle is like. That's the kind of threat that they're genuinely exposed to. And so of course they want the man who's physically the toughest, who's going to win all the fights, to protect them. That's what they find attractive. Sure, he might not be able to handle her intellectual concerns or her emotional anxieties, but this is a woman who doesn't even have the luxury of worrying about that yet, because she's still so concerned for the physical safety of her body. That's her number one priority. She can't really see past that. And when she sees this really tough, macho, masculine guy, she thinks, oh, this is a guy who can help. That's what I'm looking for. That's what's attractive to me. But this is a woman who does not have a very sophisticated understanding of the world. She still equates physical strength with power. But this world is not run by those with the greatest physical strength. That's not where the real power is. Even in other ape species like chimps, it is not the physically strongest male who becomes the alpha, who becomes the leader. It's the male who is the most socially adept. The male who can make alliances, the male who's really diplomatic, the male who everybody likes and gets along with. So if your goal is just to sleep with as many different women as possible, regardless of the quality of those women, then maybe being overly masculine is going to work. You're going to be attracting some low quality women, like kind of hood rat women, the kind of women who want to sleep with gang members, but it's probably going to be quite effective. But if you want to attract a genuinely high quality woman, a woman with a sophisticated understanding of the world, a woman who is intelligent, who has emotionally integrated all of her feelings, a woman with high self-esteem, then you can't be bringing that overly macho shit to her. She's going to see right through you. At best, she's going to find you boring. At worst, she's going to find you frightening because your worldview is just so aggressive. Ideally, you need to be a mix of both. You need to be adaptable, socially aware. You need to have the ability to read people's moods and then shift according to context. Now remember, you need to establish your masculinity first. You need to get that sorted. That has to be your core. That has to be your default setting. That's why most of my videos are about how men need to develop that first, because that has to be your number one priority, and most men are too feminine. But in this video, I'm making the case that you don't want to overcorrect and make the mistake of becoming too masculine either. Trying to be exclusively masculine is not strength, it's weakness, because you lack the courage to really explore all the different sides of you. If you're running from your emotions and you're living in a purely masculine cognitive headspace, a high quality woman is going to be able to spot that on you a mile away. So remember, you need to be masculine first, but ideally a mix of both. Remember, if you want to hear more from me, head on over to my Patreon where you can access my exclusive video content. This video is brought to you by Here Be Dragons, the story of a man who embarks on a 6-month experiment into the bizarre world of sugar babies. My full review of the book is in the description box below.